Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the California African American Education Foundation's third Water Series broadcast. Flint water disaster is what it's all about today, and could it happen here in California? I'm Nikisha Henry, and I'll be your moderator for today. So today's special broadcast is brought to you by our sponsors, the California Water Service. Based in San Jose, they've been providing safe, reliable, and high-quality water utility service since 1926. The company is committed to enhancing the quality of life for their customers, their communities, and of course, their employees. And also, our other sponsor is the California African American Water Education Foundation Board, also known as CAAWEF. So you guys, if you're tuning in, thank you so much for joining us. But before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. If you are viewing on YouTube and you have questions, if you're watching YouTube Live right now, please be sure to email them at info@caawef.org. And if you're viewing on Facebook Live, all you have to do is type your questions right on in the comments, and we'll be sure to answer them live and in living color. So for the next hour, we're going to be talking about, we'll be talking to experts about the biggest water crisis in the history of the United States, Flint, and the precautions of California and what they're taking to ensure a disaster of this magnitude does not happen here. So without further ado, it is time to meet our amazing panelists for this morning. So first up, we have the representative of the 11th Michigan State House, Representative Jewel Jones. Welcome. Can you just briefly give everyone an intro of yourself in 1 minute or less? I think you're muted. There you go.
Hello, my name is Jewel Jones. I'm a state representative here in Michigan. Happy to be here with everyone. I've been in the legislature now for about 4 years now. I'm getting ready to enter my third term after a successful election, hopefully after November 3rd. Just looking forward to serving. And I'm looking forward to the conversation along this esteemed panel of wonderful people.
Thank you so much, Representative Jones. And he's being very modest, you guys. He's one of the youngest rep leaders in that district. So, you know, he looks like he's still in high school. So this is amazing. We love it. We love it. We need that new, fresh energy. All right, next up, we have Michigan activist and community leader, Mr. DeJuan Robinson.
Yes, how's everyone doing? Just grateful to be here. Definitely joining Brother Jewel Jones, man. He's very modest, man. He's one of the young brothers on the rise here. And so we got some phenomenal things that we're looking to do in Michigan. So a lot of things that I do, I'm very avid in the community, urban communities all around Michigan. I'm also the president of Black Lives Matter Flint. I'm also on the Black Lives Matter leadership team for Michigan. And of course, one of the Flint Housing Commissioners here as well. So, and I also have a social enterprise organization, which we work with a lot of youth as it relates to systemic programs and special projects, and working with leadership schools and leadership, instilling leadership in Black students in public schools. So, I guess whatever it takes to just move the initiative forward, that's what I'm committed to doing.
Wow, that is awesome. Thank you so much, DeJuan. You wear many hats, and all of those hats are definitely needed. So thank you for all that you're doing. Next up, we have Sophie James, the Director of California Water Service.
Yeah, like she mentioned, I'm Sophie James, Director of Water Quality here at Cal Water. We're basically responsible for ensuring that our customers are getting safe drinking water every day in all of our systems. We serve over 2 million customers, and my group is responsible for validating the product we serve our customers.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sophie. Next up on the panel is Kristen Peer, the Deputy Secretary of Cal Environmental Protection Agency.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kristen Peer, Deputy Secretary for Water Policy at the California Environmental Protection Agency. I work closely with the State Water Resources Control Board here in California, and I spend a significant portion of my time on drinking water issues and working to bring safe and affordable drinking water to the people of California. So I'm thrilled to be here today to talk to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kristen. Next up, Stephen Welch, the General Manager of Contra Costa Water District.
Hello, I'm Steve Welch. I'm the General Manager of Contra Costa Water. We serve over 500,000 customers in Contra Costa, Central Contra Costa County. Our primary water source is the San Joaquin Sacramento Delta. And I'm very happy to be here with you all this morning. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And last but certainly not least, we have a very special guest joining us today, Mr. Dale Hunter, who currently serves as the Executive Director of CAAWEF. So, Dale, can you tell us a little bit about your organization and its purpose?
Yes, thank you so much. I want to thank not only the panelists and the moderator, but those who are listening. This is a very, very special broadcast, and we really want to thank you. I'm Dale Hunter, and I have the honor of serving as the Executive Director for the California African American Water Education Foundation. We were formed in early 2019. We're based in Sacramento, our state capital. And our purpose is to provide information and education to the African American community here in California. As our moderator said, this is our third program. We have a series of virtual broadcasts that we have launched and will continue to do to provide an opportunity to update and educate our community. The panel today is very, very special. Not only do we have special guests from the great state of Michigan, but we have some of the best water leaders here in California to join us to talk about what we do in our great state to ensure that everyone is getting high quality water. But with that, I'll turn it over to the moderator so that I can listen and learn.
Awesome. We're all going to be learning today. Thank you so much, Dale, for all that you're doing and the important work within the CAAWEF. And also, too, I just want to give a birthday shout out. You guys, today is Dale's birthday. Say, woo, happy birthday to you. But I am excited to just get this conversation going. So, I mean, with that being said, let's just jump right on in. So I would like to start with you, Representative Jones. In 2014, extremely high levels of lead in the drinking water caused numerous long-term health issues for the residents of the city of Flint. We all knew that. It made national news. It was global news. And so last month, it was announced that the state of Michigan will pay $600 million to Flint residents whose health was damaged by lead-tainted drinking water, which means close to 80% of the compensation will be directed to Flint residents under 18 years old. So can you just briefly describe, some of our viewers, they may know a little bit about what was going on in Flint just because of what they saw in the media, but can you just briefly describe what exactly happened and some things that we may not even know?
Flint, of course, had purchased drinking water from Detroit and ended up switching over to Flint in 2014. It was kind of like a money-saving measure that was recommended by one of the emergency managers that was appointed by the governor, Rick Snyder, from that administration. And so residents began to complain that the water was discolored, that, tasted and smelled bad. And so a lot of people were experiencing different issues from rashes to hair loss, a lot of different things of that nature. We knew it was an issue. The bottom line was that the emergency manager was focused on saving money. He did so by switching from the Detroit water supply that everyone knew was okay to this raw contaminated Flint water system. And so, for 18 months from October 2014 to October 2015, the poorly treated river water that was sent to the residents exposed thousands to elevated lead levels and other contaminants. And 4 children and families were particularly affected. And when it had switched over, the state environmental quality department failed to require the city to treat the water for corrosion, which would have been necessary to meet the federal Safe Drinking Water Act standards. And so, of course, this all happens back then. When we bring it up to today now, as far as what the state is doing about it, Flint is currently, have inspected more than 25,000 service lines, replaced 85% of the lines. It's on track to complete most of it pretty soon. I believe now they're at like more than 90% complete in terms of fixing the pipe service, the pipelines in the city. I believe because I got some numbers in front of me. So as of August 7th, of those 25,000 service lines that the city of Flint have done, about 10,000 of them included lead or galvanized steel. There's about 2,500 that's still left through the Get the Lead Out program. That's, of course, it's a zero cost to Flint residents. But still, at the end of the day, we have to realize that the overarching situation is that people who were elected and people that were appointed by elected officials chose dollars over people.
Right.
And basically failed an entire city. And so now we're dealing with, of course, a financial burden that the state has to pick up. But not only that, we're dealing with mental, emotional, physical issues that are going to be long lasting for years to come. So kind of it's like, how do we make whole a city, predominantly Black, of course, that was targeted, because of poor leadership.
Right. And you bring up a very good point on that. So first, let me just say I'm glad to hear that Michigan is they're finally stepping in and doing what they need to do as far as policies are concerned and replacing those lines, as you stated before. But I do have to ask, if this had happened, in your opinion, if this had happened in a suburban area, do you think that it would have taken this many years to finally get it right?
Well, you know what, sis, let's be honest. Look at the pandemic, for example. When the coronavirus blew out, and all of a sudden we seen they were printing money and stuff for unemployment. They were printing money for stimulus packages, all kind of stuff. It almost appears that what happened with Flint. We had a treasury then. We had people who could make decisions then, but it seemed like the biggest question everyone wanted to know was where would the money come from, that they needed to get the project done, that they needed to get people back on track. And so, it's one thing when a pandemic happens and many people who might be, I could just say more fair skinned to entertain the idea when they're affected, it appears that we'll make a way out of no way. But when we see this situation that happened in Flint, it's kind of like a lot of people are sent to fend for them own. You look at the generous contributions of many people with water bottles, and you look at water, how it's almost like George Washington Carver came up with the different uses for the peanuts and whatnot. And now you see people getting extremely creative with water bottles to survive. And when we see this entire burden on the community, why we couldn't print money then, why we couldn't make a way out of no way back then for these people that were clearly affected. And so, of course, I think if it was a better situation or more income area with higher income levels or something like that, greener grass, however we want to entertain that conversation, I think, of course, the situation would have been a lot different.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's just a sad thing. So many lives have been affected. So many of the children, and a lot of times those are things that we take for granted. Clear water. I go to turn on my sink, I'm expecting clear water to come out. So, but again, thank you for your work that you're doing there. And even though it's taken some other powers that be this long, we're glad to see that there's finally some action in place. So thank you so much for that and sharing that with us. So my next question, I actually would like to turn over to DeJuan Robinson, if we can get him on. Yes. All right. So DeJuan, just kind of, you're right there in the trenches with the people. Earlier, for those who may just be tuning in, you mentioned all of the many hats that you wear with the Black Lives Matter, being a community activist and advocate. Flint residents have truly been long suffering. And, I would like to know, as well as our viewers, what do you think the community's reaction is to this $600 million settlement? Because that may seem like a lot of money, but when we think about the magnitude of those affected, maybe not so.
Yes, no, yeah, the number seems very large. When you talk about 600 million, it seems like a very large number. But when you get down to breaking down to the facts of that number, a lot of that money is going to be allocated toward the youth, which is the most important piece. The children should benefit from this because they have been affected. We don't know what the long-term effects of what lead is going to do for those young people as it relates to learning disabilities, development processes, things of that nature. So we want to be looking at it from, kind of what they expect and kind of get ahead of what could be. So, but when you break down the number and what's going on in the community, people are very dissatisfied with that number because when you look at it in 2013, about 6-7 years ago, is what people been dealing with this water crisis and continue going through it. Not only have folks lost their homes due to because of the housing and the pipes, the house pipes going on, and the value on the property go down, and then also when you talk about the emotional and then the psychological component about being in a crisis, it does something to you. Like it's
Right.
nothing that you can say that's going to fix this problem or make people right. Money is not going to do it. And then when you throw out a low amount such as 600 million, where in Michigan, lawyers get 33 1/3 of that settlement, so it's not going to be much that's going to hit the ground. Already they getting 1/3 of that 600 million. And
Right.
for parents who are facilitating this and been on dealing with this, and they won't receive any benefit. So it's very unfortunate that that number didn't climb into the billions. We're talking $2-3 billion for just to scratch the surface to make it right for people in Flint. So everybody is very disappointed. We got more work to do, and they say this is just the start. This is the beginning, but this is a long time coming of suffering for folks in a city of 100,000. Where if you ask this question, if this happened in another community, it wouldn't have took this long. And they can print up money and the access to the treasury accounts, and they can make it happen if they want to.
Exactly.
At this point in time, they did not value the people in Flint. We had a flawed leadership. We was under receivership under state emergency law. So it was very hard for us really to kind of have a voice in that. But I do want to commend all the activists that stayed on the ground, that continue to put the pressure on Snyder when he was in office, and his emergency managers and everybody who had something to do with it. Because we had folks that was even within our leadership that was connected with the Snyder administration that knew about this problem, and they let it happen. We haven't used the Flint River since so long. Even my uncles and stuff talk about how many cars and dead bodies is in the Flint River. So to change that as a water source for us to go ahead and hook up to was just incompetent. And I blame those leaders. So as you talk about the 600 million, man, we very disappointed. That's a slap in the face.
Right, and that's definitely understandable when we think about the magnitude. So, what would be next? Because we know that this is just a start, right? Although, albeit a slap in the face, it is just a start. So, what would be next on the agenda, as far as and also let kind of add on to that. Is this crisis completely resolved? Do all of the residents have clear water? So what's the next step in all of this?
No, it's not completely resolved. Some residents are still experiencing issues with their water in their homes. So then we do have 18,000 service lines that has been scheduled to replace. I think they're working on the last part of that. But then also you still have to take into account for the house lines. You got the city lines that's hooking up to the main lines where the water is coming from Detroit. And so when you talk about the service line hooks up to the house lines. And we haven't got to the posing that question or repairing that. They have left that up to the homeowner. So that's another expense that's brought to a person who had nothing to do with something. So I think it's a very challenging thing. And we like halfway through. Like we got a long way to go to make this right for folks. But what we want to do as it relates to the next steps with the settlement is the criteria, which is going to be important because that's going to give way to the level of settlement amount that individuals will receive. And so that's still kind of like being kind of under wraps. People kind of unclear about what that looks like. I know they got some information out here in the communities and people kind of see them, but they kind of really holding tight to look at that criteria to kind of make sure that it's on a grid where people can understand like what they can expect.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, there's a lot of work to still be done, but again, it's one thing to talk about it, but it's another to be about it. And you're definitely being about it, Dewan. Thank you so much for being in the trenches, because that's the hard part, is being right there in the trenches with the residents. So, thank you for doing what you do in that community. My next question actually is going to be for Sophie, if we can get her on. Hi, Sophie. So my question for you is, while a strong regulatory environment is important, the safety of our drinking water, especially, here in California and just abroad, but speaking of California, the safety of our drinking water ultimately comes down to the utilities that actually deliver the water into our taps. So, you're a water quality expert for the state's second largest water utility. Can you describe the steps that Cal Water is actually taking to protect all of its customers?
Well, first, I want to say thanks for giving me the opportunity to participate here today. And I mean, as someone in the water industry who's committed to public health protection, my heart goes out to what happened in Flint. It's very, very disappointing.
Yeah.
But as far as Cal Water, when you really want to think about it, it's like, where does the process start for us? And it starts with the Safe Drinking Water Act. The Safe Drinking Water Act is the federal regulation that was established in 1974 to protect public health, to make sure the water we're serving customers is safe. So let's say your water system, a public water system, size of 25, starting from as low as serving a population of 25 people, you have to abide by the Safe Drinking Water Act. And so those regulatory requirements were put in place to protect our customers, to protect the public. So for us here at Cal Water, our commitment to keeping our customers safe is from the very top of the organization down to the field staff. We're committed to meeting those standards every day in our water system, meeting those standards and exceeding those standards. We have about 300 different water systems throughout our company, ranging in sizes from 25 people to as high as 250,000 people.
Wow.
And we work to make sure regulatory standards are met, that our customers are protected. So let's say for water quality, how do we make it happen? Well, we have a dedicated team of employees here in my department. I have about 30 employees working for me, who independently validate the water we're serving our customers every day. We're regulated by the state. We have permits that are issued to our water systems. Based on those permits, we have to develop and implement a comprehensive monitoring program. That involves scheduling tests, collecting samples, testing those samples, submitting reports, compliance reports to the state on a monthly basis to demonstrate that water meets standards. So it takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of coordination. It takes an independent group making decisions to ensure that our customers are getting water of the highest quality every day.
Right.
Yeah, we also have to stay on top of, we have an ethical responsibility as scientists to follow the regulations, to follow the requirements. We have a certified lab here that does testing for water systems to ensure we're meeting standards. And if you historically, we've been able to meet and exceed our regulatory standards every day. A lot of planning goes into that process. We have to stay on top of the current regulations. We have to plan for future regulations. We have to identify different sources to meet the demand of our customers as far as supply. Before a source comes online, there's a list of testing that needs to take place. And that source needs to be approved by the state before we can add that water to the system. Yeah. So there are requirements in place that was established at the state level and the federal level. For example, in California alone, we have to comply with 147 different standards every day.
Wow.
To make sure our customers are getting safe water.
Yeah, and I think that's the key part in making sure that, you know, what the tragic situation that happened in Flint doesn't happen in California or any other state for that matter, because it shouldn't be happening at all, truth be told. And so, but one of the key things that you said is the comprehensive monitoring. And so it's a daily thing, and it's amazing what you guys are doing at California Water, because it's necessary. You can't just have a system set in place and just leave it there and think the system is going to take care of itself. So the daily comprehensive monitoring, I think, is what has Cal Water, you know, as far as being one of the top agencies and making sure that doesn't happen in the state. So yeah, that's amazing. And thank you so much for being a part of that charge, because as we can see, the situation in Flint is so much needed. It has to be a daily thing. Yeah. So thank you so much, Sophie, for sharing what you do, because it's a lot and it's a daily thing. So we appreciate everything that you're doing over there at Cal Water. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so I would like to actually bring Kristen on for this next one. Hi, Kristen. So, Kristen, as you know, communities of color are disproportionately underserved by water systems, failing to meet drinking water standards. We clearly saw that with Flint, but there are other areas who may not be making national news as well. So, what is the state doing, California? What are we doing to address those disparities?
Yeah, thank you, Nikisha. That's a really, really important question. You know, we just heard from Sophia that we have really pretty stringent requirements in California that are in addition and over and above what the federal requirements are. And still we have a situation where approximately 1 million Californians lack access to safe and affordable and reliable drinking water. And unfortunately, many of those communities that are served by water systems that are not meeting standards are in communities of color. And so what are we doing about that? Since I've been in this job, which is about 5 years, drinking water has been a top priority for the governor and also the State Water Resources Control Board. Back in 2012, the California State Legislature actually enshrined in California law that safe and accessible drinking water and water for consumption and cooking and sanitary purposes is a human right for all Californians. Yet we still, with that and with our stringent regulatory environment, we still have not achieved the sort of promise of the human right to water. There's a lot of reasons for that. One of them historically was that we just didn't have the resources, we didn't have the funding to sort of shore up the persistent problems that we have in some of our water systems. California has an actually very, well, it's unfortunately not unique, but it's a sort of disparate set of water systems. So we have about 7,000 water systems in the state of California, 3,000 of which are pretty small. And each has their own sort of unique challenges and problems. And so the funding that we receive from the federal government to try to address safe drinking water issues, while it's significant and necessary, we need it, it's not flexible enough to address all of the problems that we have. And so it comes with strings attached that make it difficult to spend in the areas where they're needed. For example, you can't use the federal funding to help a system with operation and maintenance of their system. And there's also other restrictions on use of the funds. So last year was a wonderful year for safe drinking water in the state of California. The governor signed Senate Bill 200, which appropriated $130 million annually for the next 10 years. And it's called the Safe and Affordable Drinking Water Fund, and it created a new program at this State Water Resources Control Board And that funding is flexible. We have a lot of ability to use that in ways that we didn't have before. So for example, right now we're delivering 62 communities drinking water while we're working on interim solutions for that's their interim solution, and while we're working on their long-term solution to make sure that their system can deliver safe drinking water. We're also able to use that funding to provide technical assistance to communities that lack capacity for the planning of long-term solutions for their water systems. And so because of this new funding, we have a new tool in our toolbox to address some of these persistent inequities. So I think there's hope that we are going to get there. Last year, the Water Board was able to achieve all of its goals that it set out for itself. And it has lofty goals for this year as well. We're looking at several hundred systems that will be assisting with that new funding. So hope in the future.
Yeah, so when we talk about certain areas, you mentioned that 1 million Californians still do not have access to the safe drinking water. Are there particular areas as far as rural or urban, or is it just random? How exactly is that determined, and why is that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's actually statewide. It's both rural and urban. And like I mentioned, there's a lot of systems that are very small. And so the smaller systems struggle to maintain sometimes. So, pipe replacement or filter replacement, like they just don't have the economies of scale that the larger systems have. And they're sort of more vulnerable to economic shocks, for example, like recessions and that sort of thing. And so those types of problems that persist with the small systems who can't sort of get themselves back to balance, they sort of can fall out of compliance. There's also, new regulatory requirements that come online that could be expensive to comply with. If the system isn't financially sound, it can be problematic to sort of get up to speed with the new requirements. And so it's really a sort of across the board problem in California. We have systems that struggle.
Yeah. Well, no, and that the explanation makes, complete sense. So it's basically just based on the actual systems in those areas, not just because it's a certain area, but the actual system that's servicing that area.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for breaking that down. And it's good to know that $130 million grant has been given over the next 10 years, because obviously with 1 million California still not having access, there's still a lot of work to be done.
There is.
So, yeah, thank you so much, Kristen, for sharing all of that and everything that you're doing as well. So my next question is actually for Steve. If we can get Steve on. Hey, Steve. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having us. Yes, thank you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So you represent one of the largest urban water agencies in the state. And so how have you incorporated new technology into the treatment process in Contra Costa County?
Sure. Well, our first focus on technology actually is investing in the training and education of our staff. We believe that focusing on the latest knowledge in our staff allows us to tap the latest technology that we can implement in our treatment systems. And to do that, we're active members in a variety of different water agencies, from American Water Works Association to ASC, American Society of Civil Engineers, a variety of water agencies. We're also very actively involved in the Water Research Foundation. This gives us access to the latest knowledge and problem-solving techniques for water treatment. This water district for the last 2 decades has invested heavily in water treatment technology. It started with one of the first ozone disinfection systems in the state. All of our treatment plants use ozonation as a primary disinfectant. We use conventional water treatment with carbon activated filters. And we have a very robust master planning process that ensures that we're constantly evaluating our treatment plant needs and rehabilitating those those plants. Another area that we focus on for high water quality and ensuring the latest technology is water quality monitoring in our distribution system. So in our tanks and our pipelines and at our pump stations, as well as even at the customer's taps, we meet or in almost all cases exceed the state's requirements for testing, monitoring, and management of our water system. And a last area of focus for us is our customer communication process. As we heard earlier in Flint, Michigan, early reports were of cloudy water or water quality concerns and taste and odor issues out in the system. We have a very strong outreach to our customers and quickly address complaints about water quality, finding what the issue is and then resolving it. So we find that customer communication, both in receiving comments, but then problem solving and getting back to the customers, ensures that our technology is effective in delivering high quality water.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, all of the points that you brought up are equally important. But I love the fact that the customer communication is because a lot of times when there's a breakdown in communication or the voices are not heard or ignored, that's where the problem begins, and it just continues to grow and grow, and then it becomes a disaster, as what happened within Flint. So I think that's really, really important. My other question though is, so what's the new water quality concern for the urban water agencies? I know you guys are using a lot of technology to keep track and keep up with all of this, but for example, forever chemicals, right? So what's the new water quality concerns that you guys have?
Well, the federal and state government are constantly looking at new emerging contaminants, and you just identified one of the key ones. It's short acronym is PFAS, but it stands for polyfluoroalkyl substances. It's typically been found in groundwater. It comes from Teflon and some fire foam treatments, as well as stain prevention chemicals that have been used in the past, and it gets into the groundwater. It stays in the groundwater, and sadly, it builds in our blood systems when it's consumed. And so it is a key focus throughout the nation, but in California, especially groundwater systems, which I'd like to note, though Contra Costa Water, we get all of our water source is from surface water. We do have, as was earlier mentioned by Kristen, some of the smaller water systems. We have some of those within our service area. They use groundwater. It's an area that is of strong concern, is those smaller systems that generally don't have the resources to address these problems. Making sure that on a smaller scale, we don't have Flint, Michigan situations. But PFAS is really the emerging contaminant that is in this state that's a key focus of the state. The federal government's obviously stepping in as well to resolve. We don't have any of that in our system because we're taking surface water, and it isn't really found in surface water sources.
Okay.
Constantly flushing out.
Yeah.
But we do monitor for it. We monitor for for a large variety of contaminants.
Awesome. Okay. So again, even with what you're doing in Contra Costa Water District, it's a daily monitoring. I mean, there are no breaks, right? We can't afford to have any breaks because it's things can change at the drop of a dime. And so what you guys are doing over there, especially being one of the largest urban agencies, is very, very important. So thank you so much, Steve, for sharing that with us. So at this point, I would like to bring all of the panelists back on and, just kind of open it up for everyone so we can just have an open discussion here. And any one of you can answer this question, but I would like to know, what is the state doing? I know we talked about this before as far as grants being given, but what is the state specifically doing about the aging water pipes that exist right now? Would anyone like to answer?
So I can take a crack at answering that first, and then I'll turn it over to Sophie or Steve if they want to add anything. So, I think the first point to make about California is that we're different than other parts of the country in that we don't have actually a lot of lead pipes in our systems. Luckily, we're lucky for that, I think.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
And we've already talked about California's more stringent regulatory standards. But even still, one lead pipe is too many, that if it's delivering safe drink or if it's delivering drinking water. So since Flint, the State Water Board staff have maintained a really heightened attention to both the corrosion control requirements that Sophie sort of alluded to earlier. And then there's also been laws passed and new regulatory standards or regulatory requirements put into place. And so the State Water Board recently, as of July of this year, completed a statewide survey of all water systems service lines. And I think it started out with like 6 water systems had lead service line lead pipes. Now it's down to 3. So there's only 3 systems, and that's out of, again, I said there's more than 7,000 water systems in California. Only 3 have lead service lines.
Oh, wow.
16 of the systems were found to have lead fittings, and then there's a handful of other systems that don't know what's in their system. Mm-hmm. For all of those systems, they are required to present a plan to the State Water Board that with a timeline for removal and replacement of the lead. Both the service lines and the fixtures, and then also the systems that don't know what's in their system, they have to figure it out and get back to the board. So there's a lot of attention to it, and
awesome.
I think we're going to be lead free here within the next probably months to years. It's not going to be very long.
Okay, wow, that's amazing.
And just to add on to that, it's like the SB 1398 is the law that came out requiring all water systems to create an inventory of all of their pipes. So we had to spend a lot of time potholing at historical data to create an inventory of every pipe we have in the ground to validate that we don't have lead. In addition to that, Cal Water, we have a very aggressive replacement program for our pipeline. So we're constantly replacing pipes to make sure our infrastructure is of the highest quality, and that we don't have pipes in the ground that are not in the best condition.
Awesome, that's amazing. So, what exactly? And I'm sorry, were you going to say something, Steve? Did I cut you off? Oh, okay. I thought I heard someone.
I did. Can I just add one thing that members of the public can go on to the State Water Board's website and input their address and look and see whether their system that serves them has any lead in it. So that is accessible and available to the public. And I shared the website this morning with Selena. So anyway, just want to make that available to folks too.
Okay. Yeah, and it's actually scrolling across the bottom.
Look at that.
That's a great resource. I would like to ask, and any of you can chime in, especially Dewan or Representative Jones, what should we as residents, I'm an everyday mom, wife, if I go to turn on my water, what should I be looking for to know that, okay, wait a minute, something's not right here. There could be an issue potentially. What should we be looking for?
Well, if I hopped in there, I think, of course, a lot of times you don't know exactly what's in the water just by looking at it. Mm-hmm. Of course, in Michigan, I know we used to allow 15 parts per billion in our water. I believe now it's down to 12. So that's not something that you exactly can just look at in the water. But I think, of course, in extreme situations like Flint, for example, if you see running water that is discolored or something noticeably, of course, it's something that you'll report. I think beyond just looking at the water, we need to really hold our elected officials accountable, hold other people accountable on our local levels. All politics is local, of course. And so we continue to put people in office that we actually know have our best interests at heart. I think that's really going to be the thing to solve the problems, because those will be the people making some of those decisions about the infrastructure above the ground and underground. And that kind of eliminates the need for us to had to become scientists and chemists and engineers and architects, trying to figure out why we don't need to be doing the work that these other people are supposed to be doing. So I think ultimately the decision is done at the ballots, and is done at the meetings and all those different things.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you bring up a very great point in that. And I think too, it is important also for people to obviously vote. It does happen in the ballots, but just making sure that they're aware of what's actually coming out, because as I believe it was Steve who mentioned earlier, as far as the customer communication, because there were hundreds of Flint residents who communicated, hey, something is not right, and the communication was ignored. So just making sure that doesn't happen again, for us, just as, no, we're not, I'm far from being a scientist or a chemist, but I do know, I want to know signs, other than the discoloration, what I should be looking for. So if I do have to reach out to Steve or Sophie or Kristen or Dale, I'm like, hey, this is coming out of my faucet. What's going on? Should I be concerned?
So I can
Go ahead, Sophie.
So I mean, just based on my perspective as a scientist, what happened in Flint was a failure at all levels.
Mm-hmm.
There are rules established to prevent that from happening. Those were ignored. For example, you have your annual consumer confidence report. Every water system is supposed to provide that data to all of our customers as far as public notification to let them know what's in their water.
Mm-hmm.
The annual consumer confidence report is a requirement that you are supposed to send out to your customers and tell them what's in their water. And you can't take results out that you don't want to be included in that report. You
Right.
can change the data. You have to be honest. You have to be transparent. You have to have an ethical responsibility as a water system committed to public health. And the rules are in place. So it's not that they don't exist. We have rules in place to protect our customers.
Yeah.
So if you have concerns about your water, look at your annual consumer confidence report. Everything that was detected is included in that report for our customers.
Okay, thank you, Sophie. Steve, did you have something?
I just wanted to, it was exactly along the lines that Sophie just highlighted, and where customers can generally go for that information. Not only is it sent and available annually, but go to your water provider's website and you'll be able to find that information. And if you can't access it that way, there's always a customer service contact, and they can help you find the specific information about what's in your water at your address.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Dewan, you had something.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. I think when you're talking about, it's a two-pronged approach. So for one, residents and constituents shouldn't have to be testing their water and doing the scientific measures that we have been doing here in Flint to see how many parts per billion we have in our water stores every 3, 6, 9 months out the year. So it's a thing of understanding too that we elect these leaders to go ahead and do the right thing, and the communication was the main thing. That's where they dropped the ball with leadership. We're not communicating that to the public, and for them to be on the defense and be prepared to kind of get in a place to not drink the water and then also have alternative options for people. That's the role and responsibility that we expect. And so for us, if we see discoloration in our water, or if you smell something, it kind of smells like a boiled egg sometimes. It was alarming because you'll kind of get these things and that something's not right. But if nothing's been communicated to the public, you're going to drink the water, probably cook with it, wash your clothes, and think nothing of it. But that's where we have to be very communicative with each other. But we have to have the right leadership structure to carry it from the top down.
Absolutely.
I had a quick question for Mr. Robinson or Representative Jones. You talked about the pipe going into the house and the homeowners responsible for that. What about drinking water fountains at public schools? Did you guys take out all the drinking water fountains? What did you do for the kids who drink water out of the fountain?
Yeah, we removed all the drinking fountains, and we set up those water dispensaries in different schools and centers all around the city. So it's purified water that comes in. No one drinks out of the water spout. Um, but it's a thing of, I think it's a perception thing. So all the schools and all the centers have bottled water. And to my point about the bottled water, I think if we focus more on building the infrastructure, right? The bottled water is like a band-aid on a gunshot wound. So, bottled water is temporary. But if we focus more investing in the infrastructure and build a state-of-the-art infrastructure here in Flint and ensure that this doesn't happen for the next 200-300 years, then I think that'd be more versed than us getting more bottled waters and continue filling up schools and centers. And then you might have this environmental issue, right? So I think we are kind of in transition to see what best works for us moving forward.
Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, it's, you guys, all of you have shared invaluable information. It is definitely appreciated. I do want to, on a lighter note, kind of mention what you guys have going on there in Flint, with the Lakers being the new NBA champions. You guys, the mayor has decided to do a homecoming parade for Kuzman and McGee. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh man, big shout out to Kyle Kuzman, JaVale McGee, everybody, Flint Town repping. I think we move all around the world, right? Same with Detroit. We get around. But we're very proud of our brothers, man, bringing the tip home, and LeBron, man, him taking on and being the leader that he is, and quieting all the haters. We're very proud of what they did. The party in the city, man, in the next couple of weeks, man, for them boys when they come home.
Yeah, and it's not just about an NBA championship for these two, for Kyle Kuzma and JaVale, because they've put dollars back into the Flint community. Is that right?
Yeah, they actually have been very helpful in assisting with the resources and bringing dollars. Kyle has a number of basketball camps that he does here in Flint. We partner with the Flint Festival. It was just a number of different things, man, that they look to do on their half, and trying to let everybody know in Flint that they still got them. They haven't left, and they're a part of this just like everybody else.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. Well, we have a few minutes, so before we close out, I would like to give each one of you an opportunity to share brief final remarks. Any last thoughts? 1 minute or less. I'll kind of call you guys as I see you on my screen. So let's start with Steve. Any last remarks?
Sure. Again, well, thank you to everybody, and thank you to my fellow panelists. The California African American Water Education Foundation's efforts in areas like today's program is really where we need to go to educate the public and communities of color about the importance of water, the importance of getting involved in water, looking even into careers in water, because this is a ever-changing problem, is making sure that we have safe, clean, healthy drinking water. And we need lots of people to help us to solve these problems. And so thank you for efforts like today.
Thank you so much, Steve. Next up, Kristen.
Hi, thanks so much for having me today. I agree with Steve. These are such important panels to have to bring information to the public. I think there's kind of some mystery around where water comes from, and I think it's just really good to be informed. As a state official, I can say that this is the highest priority for the governor's office, for my boss, and for the State Water Board, and we will continue working and making it a priority to get safe drinking water delivered to all Californians. I'd say to hold us accountable. We are your state officials, and it's our job to make sure that the water is safe and available. I also want to touch on a very important point with the workforce development. There is a need for water engineers to help systems run and be maintained. So that's another place of up and coming work that we're going to be doing. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kristen. Sophie.
Yeah, well, I want to say thanks again for giving me the opportunity to participate. There's so much that goes on in the background when it comes to water. The water, like we mentioned, customers, you turn your tap on and you expect to get high quality water, but there's just so much going on in the background. It's really unfortunate when you hear about situations like Flint. There's a team of people, dedicated staff working in the background to make sure our customers are getting water that is safe. If you really look at what we're currently dealing with the pandemic, the water quality, people working in the water industry, we're essential workers. And we have to come to work every day to make sure that that water is flowing and that water is safe. We're dedicated, we're committed. I think anybody that works in this industry should have a commitment to public health. We're not doing it because of the money, we're doing it because of the difference we're making in people's lives every day. Thank you.
Very well said. Thank you so much, Sophie. Representative Jones.
What I would say just particularly about Flint is that, those residents experienced a considerable anxiety over the physical and mental health impacts of the lead poison that we know affected both the adults and the children. They dealt with stress, bad leadership, all kind of stuff like that. And many of the adults I've spoken to and that I've heard accounts from feel guilty about even giving some of the contaminated water to children and to other people. Families stop visiting their families that lived in town. People related the situation to thoughts of suicide. There's been grants given for people to deal with counseling. So I think, of course, like California's been very proactive in the way that they handle their business. I think we need more leadership similar to that. That's proactive, and so we don't have to worry about being reactive to things that damage entire communities. And what I will also say, aside from just repairing infrastructure, is that we need to make sure we continue funding and supporting the efforts, not only to monitor, but to prevent the long-term mental and learning effects, especially on the youth. Because when we talk about sustainability, we talk about succession planning, we talk about the future. These young people that have been critically impaired because of the results of poor leadership and bad decision making by folks that were supposed to be our leaders, is going to be experienced well into the future. And so I think it's just important for us to make sure we have conversations like this, so we know exactly what to do and what to look out for when we're dealing with these water quality issues, these air quality issues. So I commend you all. Appreciate you having us on, and I look forward to working with more subject matter experts like yourself to prevent things like this from happening in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Representative Jones. Proactive, not reactive. I love that. Thank you. Dewan.
Right. Man, I have to follow up what the brother said. We got to be proactive, and then ensuring that water is a quality of life, and everybody should have access to clean water. It shouldn't be a fact that there's problems going on with the water and the systems and nobody knows about it. That's something that we need to have. Our bodies operate off of that. So it's very important. We talk about 75% of our bodies are. So, it's just something that we want to make sure that we are putting out and pumping out quality water. And then those folks who are in leadership roles, whose job it entails overseeing that and ensuring that happens, that they make sure that they carry it out. And then in the event, if there was an incident, right, Flint has the unfortunate blessings of being the test tube baby of, filter or bad water around the country, right? I guess we had this issue, and everybody's watching what we do and the next steps and how we get from this and where we're going to take this from now. So, it's very flattering, but at the same time, we don't want this issue to happen nowhere else all around the country. We understand it just taking place in Kentucky and Louisiana, other Pennsylvania, other states that's experiencing issues with the infrastructure. America's infrastructure is old, so we have to do a diligent job of recreating, investing. Maintenance is a big important, and communication. So I do commend all the folks out in California. You sound like you all are proactive, and you're ensuring that you don't want this to happen at all. And the grants and the dollars and the resources to help support that is vital, is important. Also in ensuring that it gets to those markets and gets to where it needs to be utilized. So great work. I think you know, we can learn something a lot. We continue to have this dialogue, but ensuring that we do the right thing for the people is the key.
Absolutely. Accountability is definitely key. And thank you, Dewan, for being a part of that task force, for lack of better words there. And last but certainly not least, Dale.
I'll be very brief. Thank you, thank you, thank you. 4 words we need to keep in mind as we look at not only water, but other issues in this era, this new world. Number 1, leadership. Leadership matters. You can't say, oops. And I think that's what the folks from Michigan was reminding us about, something as precious as water. And number 2, accountability. You got to hold folks accountable. If it is a oops, they got to fess up to it. Number 3, infrastructure, basically pipes. We've got to upgrade our infrastructure. We've got to get some new pipes in. We got to make sure that not only is the water safe, but the transmission of that water to our home and to schools is safe. And lastly, it's been said 15 times, communication. You have to be upfront with folks. Our next broadcast series next week is on communication. How do you communicate with folks in an area such as water? And this is one that I think going forward, most water professionals are really going to embrace in terms of communicating with our customers and the folks that we provide service to. With that, I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes, indeed. So if we can get all of our panelists back on screen. They have been amazing. We're just going to do a round of applause right now. I know all of our audience and viewers are just loving this invaluable information that you guys have shared with us. So to our panel, thank you guys so much. You guys were awesome. A very special thanks for Michigan Representative Jewel Jones and Flint Community Leader Dewan Robinson, just for sharing your time with us today. And to all of our viewers, there will be, as Dale mentioned before, there'll be another CAAWF broadcast next week. So be sure to follow them on Facebook, as well as the Black Small Business Association, also known as BSBA, for all of the updates. And last but not least, you guys, just, you know, this discussion was so vital. We can't just have these conversations and then forget about them. Remember everything that was said. Go back and watch the broadcast. There's resources. There's things on how to communicate. If you feel that, you know, what's happening with your faucets, what's happening with your water is not right, communicate, and let's all hold one another accountable. So once again, I'm Nikisha Henry, and as always, take care of yourselves, stay safe, and be sure to vote. Vote, vote, vote. We'll see you guys next time. You guys have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.